Namaste everyone. In today's discussion, we are going to learn about the chakras. And this is going to be for those of you who are new to the chakras. So we have 7 chakras. I like to associate the 7 with 7, as we know, in the 7 levels of heaven, 7 levels of hell. There are basically 7 dimensions on this planet. Currently, right now, okay? When we were coexisting with off-planet beings, known as Pleiadians, Orions, Arcturians, we had 12 dimensions. But just us, it's just us humans right now, okay? We don't have really Pleiadian interaction when it comes to in this 3D form yet, okay? So we have 7 dimensions. And those 7 dimensions, like a temple, okay? And we associate that temple as rooms for self-mastery. And that's what the chakras are. I see as rooms for self-mastery. And we are dynamic. And when we look at our Merkaba, because when all of these chakras, let's say when we die, our chakras, they all align, they all emerge into the subtle body, the spirit body, and then we have the 10th gate, 2 feet above our head, and they all join together, they all emerge, all the chakras with the spirit body, the subtle body, and leave through the 10th gate, okay, when we die. And that's also known as like going into a white tunnel where we're brought into the oversoul, like a multiverse of potential and experience, of knowledge, also known as the Akashic record, where we have a life review with our spirit guides and we can make decisions and decide future manifestations, past resolutions, current skills and talents we want to develop. That's very much the oversoul, and we connect with that all the time when we sleep. Okay, when we sleep, and we really sleep, go in a deep relaxation, we can actually, our subtle body can travel to the Akashic record and the oversoul, and usually we travel there to kind of meet up. We could say meet up with people, spirits. It could also be people that are here on this planet it could be for men's healing. It could be a download of creativity, okay, a vision, or just greater insight, okay. Now, when that information is brought back into the body, let's say when we wake up and we haven't fully developed you could say the chakra, we all know the third eye. Basically, we can't really compute what was going on in the dream. So the psychic eye is a development, and some kids come in and they're just like, oh yeah, and some kids are like, I have no clue. It just depends. Again, we all have an oversoul, and that consists of our Akashic record, all our lifetimes on planet Earth and creation beyond. So let's say we haven't been working on our psychic development in previous incarnations. So coming into this incarnation, it's kind of like you played the guitar every day, and then you stopped for a decade, and you want to replay the guitar, but you get it, but you're not as good as the time when you would play it every single day. So it's kind of like incarnation. Some incarnation cycles, either there's many reasons why we don't really develop our psychic ability. It could be we're heavy in the dark ages, and if we are to develop that, we are going to be stoned or hanged or the guillotine. So we're forced to not develop that. And unfortunately, culturally, most of us have oppressed it, not by our choice, but we took on that the collective oppression to basically not rock the boat, okay? But the boat was already rocking, okay? The boat was already rocking, and all that sort of institutional way of kind of shutting off creativity, shutting off self-knowledge, shutting off the Akashic record, it doesn't really support the spiritual growth and maturity of human. And what we see now, we're trying to up level our spiritual growth and maturity, because our self-worth is not too good, okay, right now on the planet. And that's why we're not able to really visualize and manifest, because our self-worth is the part of us that has the creative will to expand. Okay, expand one's aura, expand one's intelligence, expand one's capacity. Okay? So when self-worth is low, we tend, to just grab for whatever is just gonna feed us for the moment. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna feed our soul. And expansion is about expanding your energy field so that you can begin to connect with richness of experience, richness of nutrients that are gonna bring you to the soulfulness of who you truly are, okay, or who our higher destiny or our purpose for coming into this physical body. Okay, so that's what we call like amnesia. Like we just don't. What did I dream last night? It makes no sense. It's just a bunch of random stuff. Okay, and in the Egyptian times, dreams were very much like trances. The Egyptians were masterful at self-hypnosis and trances, and it's very much like dream states. And that's why they have this cryptic hieroglyphics that even Egyptologists today don't really understand. They like to say, like, yeah, I got it, but still, it's so dynamic. It's like a dream. In order to really decipher the dream state or the trance or the self-hypnosis, you have to have a really developed psychic eye, which is your intuitive self-trust. So a lot of the chakras are to support, all of them are to support your self-mastery. Okay, we dived into like the third eye when it comes to connecting with the oversoul and the Satric record beyond the 10th gate. Again, which is like the Merkaba. Okay, so all the chakras, when we die, they all merge, okay, together, and becomes the spirit and the subtle body. Okay, and that's, I like to say, our purest identity. Our purest identity is known as the spirit and subtle body, and that becomes the soul body, or the authentic self. Okay, so many words, right? So many things. So the chakras emerge into that, and then that essence of ourselves, the spirit, subtle body, essence of ourself, leave through the 10th gate in like a Merkaba energy. So the Merkaba is known as like a 5-point star. We're 5-point star. You have 2 arms, 2 legs, and then you have a head. That's your 5-point star, okay, as Da Vinci would say. Okay, and that's also, when we look at that from energetics, it's a Merkaba. It's like a 3D Merkaba energy, and usually that's associated as the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, the Oversoul, the Satric record, they're all kind of the same thing. Okay, so getting into the chakras, that was kind of like an advanced start. Okay, but I always like to just dive right in, do the advanced stuff first. So we have red to violet, like the rainbow. Everything is light and sound. Light and sound. Everything manifests through light and sound. And light and sound, the coding of it's very much like a gong resonance. Okay, that it's very much like a gong. You gone to listen to a gong or had a gong bath. We associate the gong as the light and sound that created the universe. Okay, so the rainbow, red to violet. So you can see red as the reproductive system, and you can see violet as the crown. So if you have a beautiful crown over your head, okay, and then the whole rainbow in between, okay. So we'll just dive in to the root chakra first. The root chakra, I call it the basement of our lives, and the basement of our lives is our foundation, okay. when our foundation is wanky, the whole house is wanky. So the root chakra for a lot of people, if there's a trauma in the childhood, it will affect all the chakra systems. Okay, it's like if the foundation is wanky, pretty much the whole house is going to be a little bit off. Okay, it's going to be a little bit shaky and uneven, we could say, uneasy. So the root chakra is red. Okay, and there's many reds. It could be dark red, blood red, light red, sort of like an orangey red. It's just unique depending on your expression of it. That can also be seen in an aura photo. So red. It has to do with your security, your safety. So that's again the childhood. We get our first idea of security and safety from the childhood. So if we've had, let's say, a rough childhood, that trauma is stored there, and we always, even as an adult, we can feel very like unsafe and feel insecure. So we talk about the security is stored in the lower the bodies, the lower body, okay, the hips particularly. So people who tend to be uptight usually are uptight because they don't have the enough positive self-concept to actually move, to take a risk, to jump in. Okay, so again, the hips. A lot of people, everyone on this planet, are dealing with wanky hips, misaligned hips, and that definitely has to do with the root chakra. And the thing about the hips is that when our hips are off, we cannot entirely express ourselves to the fullest. That's one thing. And that becomes a great frustration, because it becomes almost like a bottling up. Like, I want to do something, I want to move the energy, I want to move the energy, but I can't. And that's frustrating. It's very frustrating. So people who can have like misaligned hips can also are more likely to be caught in ruts when it comes to their ability to move, such as follow through on what your heart is telling you to do. Okay, if our hips, we don't have much movement, or I like to say much jazz in the hips, we're most likely going to be frustrated at the fact that we want to move, but we have this blocked energy about us. Okay, so root chakra, safety and protection. It also has to do with sex and money and our sense of having authority over ourselves. Okay, again, we get frustrated and angry when we don't really have authority, or it's also self-responsibility. Because if we're given, let's say, a self-concept at a very young age that is victimhood, irresponsibility, don't take ownership, we're not going to really have a sense of authority over our life, and therefore, again, more frustration and more anxiety and more anger can come from that. So we see anger as that red, and usually that has to do with a lot of frustration, tension, and anger that we're holding. Could be in the hips, and we're holding in, and even it could be in the reproductive system. Okay, where we want to move. We want to be liberated. We want to liberate, money and sex, so that we can feel more of a leader, but we just can't seem to do it. Okay, so because we have a self-concept that we're carrying in the root of ourselves, the very foundation of ourselves, that is, lack of self-responsibility, or lack of leadership, or lack of self-authority, lack of sense of liberty over your life. Okay, and that is a root self-concept, that does not support the spiritual growth and development of, we could say, the adult. So, root chakra. Then we get into the second chakra, known as the orange. Okay, and orange is the navel. And this, again, this is one of, I like to say there's three major power hubs, I like to say. All of the chakras are like temples for self-mastery. And the root chakra is a self-mastery over one's self-concept, okay? Self-concept as self-image, as well as self-trust, okay? Trust. And that has to do with authority, and that has to do with leadership, okay? So the navel is a power hub. Okay, so it's a little different. It's a little bit of a different chakra. It has it's a powerhouse, we'll say. And the navel, just below the belly button, very much has to do with our creative will. So this also known as the gut. It's the second brain. Okay, and the second brain is our instinct. It was very active when we were very much out in nature, but now we're not. So it's a little bit sleepy, a little bit dormant. But that navel is also known as metabolism, and we can digest. So metabolism, it's just as functional or active as like the brain, just in a different way. It helps us to metabolize energy. So as energetic beings, we pick up things, we absorb things, we can accumulate things, we can get backed up and build up energetically. So the metabolism of the power hub, the navel, helps us to basically deconstruct the constipation that we get. So everything that we take in, even things we hear, things we sing, if we don't have an ability to metabolize it, it kind of stores. Okay, it stores. So the navel is a way for us to deconstruct energetic buildup. Okay, so that we can like loosen up some energy, and that loosening of that energy, I like to see it kind of like glucose, I guess I would say. When that circulates throughout the body, it gives us a lot of chi. Okay, it's like, it's kind of similar to your when you eat food. Okay, but this is energetically. It takes in energy and it deconstructs it and organizes it in such a way where it gives you chi. And this chi is your creative will. If you have a lot of chi, known as powerhouse, like Michael Jackson, a perfect example, then you can have a lot of movement in this life. So you can have a lot of movement, you can have a lot of projection, you can have a lot of manifestation. Okay? So the quicker you are at metabolizing, the quicker you are at, let's say, growing and maturing. So some people have a really messed up gut. The food they're eating, KFC chicken, and that just kind of sits in their gut, and it can't, the navel's like, what is this? So then it gets off, and it doesn't know how to really process it, because it's not real food. It's like, what is this? I don't know how to. It's like Mother Gaia doesn't know how to process plastic. There's like Gaia, the soil is like, how do I decompose this unnatural thing? It's plastic. Like, what do? I just I don't know. I don't know what to do. That kind of what happens with like Kentucky Fried Chicken, or this sort of nasty food that we take in. It just sits there, and we get slow. We get very slow. So there's a lot of people who are very sluggish, and they don't know why. It's because their metabolism has gotten even slowed down, because it's still trying to process this block before, we want the metabolism moving. We don't want it, I have to digest this block. And that even could go in emotionally. So we work with the navel through the hips. So again, if your hips are very limber, they're very loose, if you do a lot of squats, if you do like dancing, moving those hips, what you're going to see is the more mobility you have in the hips, the more alignment you have in the navel, and the more you just tend to feel more anchored in creative will. And basically what that means is you feel able to process and to evolve anything that comes your way. When your navel's off, things that get too heavy, nervous breakdown. Things that, are seeming like, this is like beyond me, breakdown, or I can't handle it, and I'm wiped out. So it really gives you that creative will so you can really find it within yourself. It gives you a lot of stamina to move to the next level, because we all want to move to the next level, but we get caught in a rut, or we get in a problem that we just don't know how to process and to find the creative solution, and then we just kind of get just caught in there. That's the navel helps us to break through. So anything that's going to really break us through into the next level of our spiritual growth and maturity is going to be the navel. It's the power hub. It's the powerhouse to movement. We are a movement. You are a movement. I am a movement. We're all movement. Okay? And that is basically the stamina, what backs the movement. So you have the creative velocity to be able to keep going and moving forward and processing all of the energetic sort of chaos that may come your way. So, and then we have the solar plexus. Solar plexus is like right here, just below, just above, you could say your main, your belly button, okay, and below your breasts, okay, your chest, kind of right here at see the rib cage. And the solar plexus is the color yellow, and that has to do with your radiance as well as your vitality. So vitality and radiance, okay? So how we work that is, a lot of children have a very bright and luminous solar plexus. If you really look at them, they have this beautiful yellow glow. A lot of them do. And basically, how we work with the vitality is, it's connected to our energy reserve. I like to say the solar plexus. So again, that can do with our breathing and how deeply we're breathing. Children tend to be very deep breathers, so they have a lot of vitality and radiance because of that. So with vitality, it has to do with the balance in the scales when it comes to our energy reserve. Okay, so like I said, if our energy is getting too frustrated or too agitated, we can get very drained and depleted. So I like to see the solar plexus is kind of like, it mediates. It mediates our energy. Okay, it mediates our energy. Now, yes, I'm going to say that's the main thing. Okay, I'm going to get into the heart now. Okay, so the heart chakra we know is green, and it is the biggest electromagnetic field. Okay, it's the biggest electromagnetic field, and we could see as the brain or the third eye is a big electromagnetic field, but I would say the heart and the navel is actually bigger electromagnetic field, meaning it has a bigger projection. Now, a lot of people's navels is very not good, so it's very disabled for a lot of people. So the heart chakra, we know that has to do with acceptance and compassion. It also has to do with magnetism. Okay, so we're very magnetic when our heart is luminous. So when we talk about the luminosity of ourselves is the heart. When our heart is very bold, when our heart is very regal, okay, and very noble, we tend to emit a lot of light. Okay, so I like to say our lighthouse is our heart. So when a guru, a yogi, a monk, whatever spiritual teacher, okay, that really penetrates you, it's the lighthouse of their heart that you are taking in. So teacher is never a mind game. We're not preaching mind games, okay, as a teacher. It is the resonance of the heart that gives off this lighthouse of inspiration and divine impact and empowerment. So I see empowerment a lot of times has to do with the heart. You know, the empowerment of the heart. The heart is the center of our soulfulness. Okay, so the more empowered that heart is, the more we're empowered with our feelings. Okay, connected to our feelings, tapping into our feelings, aware of our feelings, not afraid of feelings, allowing the feelings to be empowered. They're actual tools of empowering your feelings so that they don't become like heavy, dense sort of minerals that are just kind of sitting there. There's a way to move the heart energy so that it becomes I would say the word is inspired is the heart chakra. Now, the heart is either inspired or disinspired, and there's no really in between. So, inspired heart is an empowerment of your feelings. Because the feeling body has to do with human evolution and human growth in consciousness. It has to do with the empowered feeling. So in your astrological chart, we usually look at the moon sign to see what's going to give you the most human evolution and what's going to give you the most growth in consciousness. So, for example, my moon is Gemini. So Gemini is what's really going to help me to really evolve and to, you could say, develop consciousness in this particular lifetime. Okay, so we associate that heart very much like the moon. It's about nurture, it's about care, it's about self-love, it's about empowering yourself. Again, you're inspired, empowered, or you're disinspired and you're disempowered. There's no really in between. Okay? So the heart is very special. It's connected to all the chakras, but it really has its own sort of its own identity. It really has its own sort of movement. You know, it has its own movement. Like these lower chakras are very much in sync with each other. But then the heart is like its own sort of field. That it gets involved with, you could say, the navel and the higher chakras, but it really just has its own center. It is the center. It's the center of our universe, and it knows that. So when we are very grounded in our heart, we feel more centered. And when we feel more centered in our life, we actually have greater amount of abundance. People don't know that. When we're just in the mind games, we're actually not even touching the surface of what we can actually manifest in this lifetime. Because the heart, again, is magnetism. It's the strongest electromagnetic field, and how we attract is through magnetism, like atoms, particles, they attract together. The sun, the moon, earth, it all happened because the magnetics were strong enough to kind of pull things together. So our mind games has no it has a pulse that can interact and sort of influence and disrupt, you can say, the energetics of our chakras. But the heart, it has the strongest prevailing magnetic pull on our environment. So when we talk about I'm pulling in this or I'm pulling in that, it really has to do with the level of empowerment you have in your heart and in the broadcast. So if we're broadcasting anything, such as I'm broadcasting my essence into this planet, that kind of thing, which we're all doing, it's the electromagnetic field of the heart. Okay? And usually when we have our life review, when we die, the first thing that we really dive into is matters of the heart. Okay? And the feeling. Usually we get into the feeling. Because the feeling is that sensor awareness or that sensitivity usually is the honesty of our lives. So when we die, we really connect with that in our life review, that sensitivity, because that's what helps us to really get in touch with the honesty of how we're living and how we see ourselves and how we see others and how we express ourselves. So heart is about I would say that the self-mastery temple is about articulation. Articulation of feelings helps you to better, I would say, articulation of feelings helps us to develop a character. Okay, and feelings can also be about your expression of like who you are. If you know how to like better articulate that, people tend to have more of a character to themselves. Okay. And that doesn't have to be like public speaking. It can also just be just in your presence. Some people just have that presence where they're articulating their whole energy just so clearly and so impactfully. Okay. Then we get into the throat, and the throat is a blue, and the throat is very much about vibration, I like to say, okay, the vibration of ourself. So it's like the self-mastery is vibration. So I like to see the throat as like the light and sound. Okay. The light and sound of our lives. So I see the throat vibration has to do with the gong. So the throat has a like an amphitheater. And that amphitheater is also connected to the heart chamber and also connected to the head. And that amphitheater receives light and sound. So when we talk about our soul's mantra, it's usually in the throat chakra, that's soul's mantra. So with the soul mantra, okay, which carries the essence, I like to call the throat chakra as our authenticity. Okay, authenticity. So again, we're working with the thyroid. Okay, and there's a thyroid epidemic on this planet, where basically we having difficulties really uncovering our authenticity. Okay, it's very natural to really uncover your authenticity, your mantra, your soul's essence, your light and your sound. But when this is like blocked, or when we're like, have a cloak around it kind of thing, we don't know how to really vibrate out what we want. And that's the thing about the throat. When we really connect with our authenticity, we really connect with the light and sound, our soul's mantra, we're better at it vibrating out what we want. And it doesn't have to be speaking. There's a vibration going on in this throat all the time when we're not even speaking, or even when we're sleeping. And that vibration is constantly sending out the light and sound that is creating these sort of ripples in our environment, of letting the universe, letting the environment know what I need. So the more that this is blocked, the more this light and sound, the vibration, it can't get out, and it can't tell the environment what you need. And that those people like this, they tend to always feel like misunderstood, and they feel, again, like they're, no matter what they do, they're not really receiving or giving what is truly nourishing for themselves and for the environment. So again, the throat chakra, I see it as like vibration, also has to do with the feng shui of our life. When we really connect with this vibrato, even you can connect to, like, a lot of musicians have a really powerful throat chakra. A lot of musicians or poets or writers, because that all has to do with telling the story of your kind of coming here. And that's kind of the throat chakra. It's like telling the story of like you coming here and what you want and what you're trying to learn and all of that. Letting people know who you are. Either you're a poet, you're a musician, you're telling people who you are. Okay, so then we'll get into the third eye. The third eye right here I like to see it as indigo. And the third eye has to do with our, the pineal gland, has to do with the visionary inside of us, I like to say. So we all have a visionary inside of us. And this visionary has to do with visualization. Okay. So in all things, this is where we learn self-mastery and visualization. Now the pineal gland has a very strong electromagnetic field, but it's not as strong as, the heart. But its focus is projection. So when we have a visualization, we're projecting from our frontal lobe, which is like, see it as the pineal gland is like in the head. I can't really go in there and try to touch it. And then the frontal lobe is like the projection out. So it's about projection. So again, when we get from the root chakra, which has to do with self-concept, your subconscious base level, root level self-concept, that really can, it can create a projection. Okay. Because you have a natural sort of vision for yourself, but when you get that combined with your self-concept, it can really limit that vision. So that's what I said, when you got to work on that hips to really move some of that tension or that limitation or that low self-worth or low self-concept you have. Basically what this says is like, you have a vision, but you don't really listen to it, you don't really trust it, and you kind of even go against it because you've been taught in childhood that who you are, what you desire, your leadership, your movement, we're all a movement, it's not really significant. It's just, there's nothing there. So our third eye has to do with the projection of our vision. So when we have a positive self-concept in our basement, we can have a very, I would like to say, majestic vision. So the third eye, we know, is like the realm of all realms. Okay, it's the temple where all temples kind of come together. And I like to see it as we're all the chakras, if they were people, they would all come together in the third eye and they would all share to really enhance the vision of the person. So your navel enhances the vision of you, gives you creative will to execute it. Your heart, it gives your vision, your third eye, forgiveness and space to learn from your feelings. Okay, so you can so that you can better navigate, okay, and find a haven for you to continue your quest of refining your visualization in this life. And then your throat chakra, letting people know like who you are and like what's going down with you. Okay, they all kind of meet together, I like to say, in the third eye for discussion and for reinvention and for alchemy. So all the chakras kind of come together in that third eye, and they kind of have an alchemy where they kind of make a brew together. And then we'll get into the crown, and the crown violet energy, also known as violet gold, and that has to do with your connection to creation beyond. So I call it like the infinity ring. It's like, I like to see it like a ring, like a little crown, like a halo. It's sort of like a ring around your head. And that has to do with your ability to receive and give higher vibrations. So those higher vibrations are first brought into, a lot of times, the top of the head. They're like, there's like a little, feels stimulants, or feels like a little, like, I don't know what's the word, tingles on the top of the head. That represents a higher vibration is being given to you, or you're giving it. Okay, you're kind of doing that. Usually you can get that when you're could even be meditating, where there's just all this energy because there's a lot of higher vibration. So that crown is it stores the higher vibrations. And through the crown, it circulates the higher vibrations throughout the entire body, all the way to the root chakra. So it's kind of like the root chakra is like the kundalini, which is about creative energy of that, that this body has. And it brings it up into, you say, the third eye when we talk about vision, giving a lot of energy to your visualization, which has to do with what you came here to do, to manifest, to execute, to realize in this lifetime, and also do with your overall greatness, you could say, breakthrough. Okay. And the crown chakra, again, it's connected to the higher vibrations that you are maintaining and sustaining in your body. So a lot of times I can wear like hats like this, you could say, like my turban, because it's about really when you have a lot of like higher vibrations through meditation and that kind of thing, when you really are moving that kundalini energy into a visionary state, you're gonna have so much sort of energy that's just like all like swirling around up here. And that all has to do with the higher vibrations that you're inviting into your life. And those higher vibrations that you're receiving and giving, it all has to do with your intention. Like, we all have an intention. Your intention to experience a higher incarnation, and that higher incarnation is always associated with like deep imagination, a very deep creative vision. Okay, so that's kind of like the crown. It's sort of all that swirling energy with has to do with all that imagination, all that deep creativity that's like right there, like kind of like flooding in. So again, that deep imagination, that deep creative, we talk about beyond, like originality that's like beyond, like Dr. Seuss kind of stuff, or J.K. Rowling, or I like to say even Mr. Rogers. All of that is like a divine creative, a divine deep creativity that's kind of like coming in, and it's like anchoring to your navel. Usually that high divine creative sort of magic or miracle, it anchors to your navel. So it kind of comes in and anchors right here. While that kundalini kind of, which is your movement, you are a movement, it kind of moves up here, kind of to energize. So it's like there's both sort of like a two-way street going on when it comes to your body. Okay, the two-way street. So yeah, I just wanted to dive into this. I think this is all that I'm going to share right now. I don't want to get too complex, okay? Because even like I'm talking, I'm like, oh, like this is a lot, and I don't even know if I really can compute. Okay, I don't know if I can compute, but I hope that this has helped you to like further expand your knowledge on the chakras. Again, this is different, we can say, from other sort of videos on chakras, because it's based on my own experience with the chakras and my own spiritual practice of learning about the chakras and their sort of temple for self-mastery. So, yes, thank you.